Factfulness, 10 Reasons We're Wrong About the World, and Why Things Are Better Than You Think, by Anna Rosling. Picture this. A respected professor stands before the most powerful people on earth and suddenly starts unbuttoning his shirt. The audience leans forward, confused. What's happening? This wasn't a breakdown. This was Anna Rosling, a brilliant global health expert, about to make the point of a lifetime. Underneath his button-down was a sparkly vest that would make Elvis jealous. He called for a drum roll, and then, slowly and deliberately, he swallowed a Swedish army bayonet. The crowd went absolutely wild. But here's the thing. He wasn't showing off. He had just spent the last hour systematically demolishing everything these leaders thought they knew about the world. These were smart people, mind you. Chief executives, presidents, Nobel Prize winners. And Rosling had proven, using nothing but data, that their understanding of global poverty, health, and progress was completely, utterly wrong. They thought the world was split cleanly into rich and poor. They believed poverty was spiraling out of control. They were convinced humanity was racing toward disaster. Then he showed them the numbers, real numbers, the kind that don't care about your feelings or your preconceptions. And those numbers told a different story entirely. Billions of people had escaped poverty. Children were surviving at unprecedented rates. The world was healthier and more educated than ever before in human history. To these powerful people, these facts seemed as impossible as swallowing a sword. So he swallowed the sword. Standing there with a bayonet down his throat, he wanted them to experience that moment of wonder, that little voice in their head asking, if that's actually possible, what else have I been completely wrong about? This is what factfulness is all about. It's not some dry statistics textbook. It's a survival guide for thinking clearly in a world that constantly tries to confuse you. And it was Anna Rosling's final mission, the project he dedicated his last years to completing while battling terminal cancer. He had discovered something extraordinary. When you ask educated people basic questions about global trends, poverty rates, health statistics, population growth, they don't just get the answers slightly wrong. They get them systematically, predictably, spectacularly wrong. In fact, he proved that a chimpanzee randomly picking answers would outperform most journalists, politicians, and business leaders. Let that sink in for a moment. The world's most educated people scoring worse than a chimp throwing darts at a board. So what's going on? Why are we so consistently mistaken about the world we live in? And more importantly, what can we actually do about it? That's the journey we're about to take together. By the time we're done, you'll have a completely new toolkit for seeing the world not as it feels in your gut, but as it actually is. You'll learn to swap out your anxious, dramatic worldview for one grounded in facts. And here's the beautiful part. You might discover that the world is a far more hopeful place than you ever imagined. Let's start with a straightforward question. Do you think the world, on the whole, is getting better or worse? If your instinct says worse, you're in good company. Most people feel the same way. And, honestly, can you blame them? Every day we're hit with stories of war, disaster, poverty, corruption, and chaos. It genuinely feels like we're watching everything unravel in real time. Anna Rosling had a name for this, the overdramatic worldview. And not only is it stressful and misleading, it's almost completely backwards. For decades, Rosling traveled the globe with a simple test. 13 factual questions about the state of the world. He wasn't asking for opinions or guesses. These were straightforward questions with objective answers. He gave this quiz to thousands of people. Students, doctors, business executives at Google and Coca-Cola, political leaders at the World Economic Forum in Davos. The results were absolutely jaw-dropping. On average, people got only 2 questions right out of 12. A stunning 15% scored 0. Keep in mind, with 3 options per question, a chimpanzee randomly guessing would score about 4 correct answers. Now, this isn't about intelligence. These were genuinely brilliant, well-intentioned people. The issue wasn't that they lacked knowledge. The problem was that they had wrong knowledge, ideas that were decades out of date, lodged firmly in their heads like old software that never got updated. Rosling realized this wasn't the media's fault, and it wasn't about fake news either. The problem ran much deeper. It was baked into how we think. Our brains evolved with instincts that kept our ancestors alive on the African savanna, but in today's complicated world, those same instincts lead us astray. They make us crave drama, leap to conclusions, and see everything in black and white. He identified 10 of these dramatic instincts, and the most powerful one, the instinct that warps our worldview more than any other, is what he called the gap instinct. This is our irresistible urge to divide everything into 2 opposing camps: us versus them, rich versus poor, the West versus the rest. We imagine this enormous chasm between these groups. Here's the mental picture most of us carry around: a world split in 2. On one side, the developed world, with small families, long lives, and high incomes. On the other side, the developing world, with huge families, short lives, and crushing poverty. The problem? That picture is from 1965. Back then, it was actually true. The world really was divided into 2 distinct groups. But would you use a map from 1965 to navigate your city today? Of course not. Everything has changed. Today, the vast majority of humanity lives in the middle. That gap? It's gone. The old labels of developed and developing are basically meaningless now. In fact, 85% of the world's population lives in what we used to call the developing world. But their lives have been completely transformed. Girls go to school. Children get vaccinated. Most families have just 2 kids. This us versus them thinking is so deeply ingrained that it blinds us to reality. Rosling knew he needed to replace this broken model with something that actually works, something accurate. So he created a simple framework that might be the most valuable thing in this entire book. Instead of 2 categories, he divided the world into 4 income levels. Think of it like levels in a video game. Everyone in the world lives on one of these 4 levels, based on their daily income. Level 1 is extreme poverty. 1 billion people live here right now. You're surviving on less than $2 a day. You walk for hours barefoot to fetch water from a muddy hole. You cook over an open fire, and your family eats the same basic porridge every single day. Your children get sick often, and you can't afford medicine. One of them might die from something easily preventable. This is life on the edge of survival, every single day. 200 years ago, 85% of humanity lived on level 1. Level 2 is where the biggest chunk of humanity lives today, 3 billion people. Your income has jumped to about $4 a day. You can buy food you didn't grow yourself. Maybe you have some chickens for eggs. You save up and buy sandals for your kids and a bicycle, so fetching water doesn't eat up your entire day. You get a gas stove, which means your children can attend school instead of gathering firewood. You might even have electricity, though it's unreliable. Life is significantly better, but precarious. One serious illness could knock you right back to level 1. Level 3 is home to 2 billion people. You're earning around $16 a day. You work long hours, but you've got some savings. You install a cold water tap in your home. No more fetching water. You have stable electricity, so you buy a refrigerator. You can save up for a motorcycle, which opens up better job opportunities. Your children can finish high school. And for the first time, you might take a vacation, even if it's just an afternoon at the beach. Level 4 is where most people reading this live. 1 billion people are here. You earn more than $64 a day. You have at least 12 years of education. You've got hot and cold running water, a car, and you can fly to other countries for holidays. Life on this level is comfortable. This 4-level framework completely demolishes the myth of a divided world. It shows us that living standards exist on a continuous spectrum. And most importantly, it reveals that the majority of people aren't living in desperate poverty. They're on levels 2 and 3, steadily building better lives, step by step. This isn't wishful thinking. It's documented fact, and it's the key to seeing the world clearly. Once you understand these 4 levels, the other instincts that fool you start losing their grip. Take the negativity instinct, our tendency to notice bad things way more than good things. Gradual improvement doesn't make the news. A plane that lands safely isn't a headline. But a plane that crashes? That's front-page material. Over time, this selective reporting creates this overwhelming feeling that everything is falling apart. Well, what do the actual facts say? Let's look at extreme poverty, life on level 1. In the last 20 years, the proportion of the world's population living in extreme poverty has almost halved. This is genuinely the most important change in the world during our lifetimes. In just 2 decades, over 1 billion people have escaped the worst suffering imaginable. But only 7% of people know this. Rosling's antidote to the negativity instinct is beautifully simple. Things can be both bad and better. Imagine a premature baby in an incubator. Her situation is critical. It's bad. But every day, her vital signs improve. She's getting better. Would it make sense to say her situation is either bad or improving? No, it's both, simultaneously. The world is that premature baby. There are still massive problems. 1 billion people on level 1 is 1 billion too many. But the world is also getting dramatically better. Holding both truths in your mind at once is essential for a fact-based worldview. It protects you from both hopeless despair and naive optimism. This leads us to another powerful instinct, the fear instinct. Our brains come with a built-in attention filter. We can't process everything, so our brains prioritize what seems dangerous. Violence, disaster, disease, terror. These trigger deep evolutionary fears of physical harm, captivity, and contamination. The media understands this perfectly. So our picture of the world becomes a daily highlight reel of the absolute worst things happening anywhere on the planet. Here's the paradox. The world has never been safer, but the image of a dangerous world has never been broadcast more effectively. Consider natural disasters. Over the last 100 years, how has the annual death toll from natural disasters changed? Has it more than doubled, stayed roughly the same, or decreased to less than half? Most people think it's doubled. The correct answer is that it's decreased to less than half. Actually, it's dropped to just 25% of what it was a century ago. Why? Because most of humanity no longer lives on level 1. Higher income means better buildings, stronger infrastructure, and more effective warning systems. We've gotten much better at protecting ourselves. The same pattern holds for plane crashes. In 2016, 40 million commercial flights landed safely. Only 10 ended in fatal accidents. That's 0.000025%. Yet which ones dominate the news? Fear messes with our priorities. In the 10 days after the tragic Nepal earthquake in 2015, which killed 9,000 people, the world's attention was glued to rescue efforts. During those exact same 10 days, another 9,000 children around the world died from diarrhea caused by contaminated water. No camera crews, no helicopters. The solution isn't dramatic. It's pipes, pumps, and soap. The lesson? Distinguish between what's frightening and what's actually dangerous. Risk isn't about how scared something makes you feel. It's danger multiplied by exposure. When we let fear drive, we obsess over the rare shark attack while ignoring common, preventable diseases that kill millions. Now let's talk about how we misunderstand trends. This is the straight line instinct. Our brains love to assume that lines on graphs will just keep going in the same direction forever. When we see the world population chart, which has shot up dramatically over the last century, our instinct screams that it'll just keep climbing forever. This is terrifying. It feeds fears of catastrophic overpopulation and resource depletion. But this instinct is wrong. Rosling asks a simple question. Today there are 2 billion children in the world, aged 0 to 15. How many children will there be in the year 2100, according to United Nations experts? A. 4 billion. B. 3 billion. C. 2 billion. Almost everyone picks A or B. They assume the number of children will keep growing. The correct answer is C. The number of children in the world is expected to stay roughly the same. We've reached what Rosling calls peak child. The number of children in the world has stopped increasing. So why will the total population keep growing by another 3 billion people? It's not because we're having more babies. It's because the 2 billion children alive today, plus the 2 billion young adults, will eventually grow up and fill out the older age groups. It's a fill-up effect that takes a few generations, and then it's done. Population will level off somewhere between 10 and 12 billion people. What caused this incredible shift? The average number of babies per woman worldwide has dropped from 5 in 1965 to just 2.5 today. This happened as people escaped poverty, child survival improved, and women got educated. Parents no longer needed many children for farm labor or as insurance against some dying young. This is the new equilibrium. For the first time in human history, parents can have 2 children and expect both to survive to adulthood. Understanding this helps us see why saving the lives of poor children doesn't cause overpopulation. It's the exact opposite. When child survival rates improve, parents choose smaller families. The single most proven way to curb population growth is to eliminate extreme poverty. Another instinct that trips us up is the generalization instinct. We naturally categorize and stereotype. It's a mental shortcut, but it leads to massive misunderstandings. When we think of Africa, we often picture a single story of poverty and conflict. But Africa is a continent of 54 countries. Life in Tunisia is as different from life in Somalia as life in Sweden is from life in Afghanistan. Generalizing about Africa makes as much sense as generalizing about Asia. The same goes for religion. Many assume certain religions lead to larger families. But when you look at the data, the biggest factor determining family size isn't religion, it's income. Across all major religions, people on level 1 have large families, and people on levels 2, 3, and 4 have small families. Muslim women in Iran today have fewer children than Christian women in the United States. Our stereotypes crumble when confronted with facts. To fight this, Rosling encourages us to question our categories. Look for differences within groups and similarities across groups, and assume other people aren't idiots. If something looks strange, like a half-built house in Tunisia, don't assume people are lazy. Get curious and ask, in what way is this actually a smart solution? The answer: it's a saving strategy. In places without reliable banks, you buy bricks one at a time and add them to your house. It's a physical savings account, safe from inflation and theft. This leads us to the destiny instinct, the idea that characteristics of people, countries, or cultures are fixed and unchangeable. Africa will always be poor. Asian values will never change. This simply isn't true. Societies are constantly evolving. Rosling's own grandfather in Sweden, just a couple generations ago, held patriarchal values that many would today label Asian or African. He believed women belonged in the home and would never discuss contraception. Today, Sweden is seen as a beacon of gender equality and openness. Cultures aren't rocks. They move, and often they move much faster than we think. Slow change is still change. A 1% improvement each year seems tiny, but it doubles in 70 years. This is how progress happens. Gradually, then suddenly. Then there's the instinct for simple answers. The single perspective instinct is our love affair, with simple causes and simple solutions. It's the old hammer and nail problem. If your only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. Ideologues and even experts fall into this trap constantly. If you believe the free market is the answer to everything, you'll see government as the cause of all problems. If you believe inequality is the only problem, you'll see redistribution as the only solution. The world is far too complex for a single perspective. Rosling uses the example of Cuba and the United States. Cuba, with its single-minded focus on state-run services, has achieved health outcomes as good as the United States on a fraction of the income. A Cuban minister proudly told him, "We are the healthiest of the poor." But a quiet statistician whispered the truth. "No, we are the poorest of the healthy." Meanwhile, the United States, with its deep faith in market-driven solutions, spends more per person on healthcare than any other country in the world, yet has lower life expectancy than 39 other nations. It's the sickest of the rich. Neither system is a perfect model. The real world requires a whole toolbox, not just a hammer. You need to combine ideas, compromise, and solve problems case by case. This brings us to one of our most powerful instincts, the blame instinct. When something bad happens, we hunt for a villain. A greedy chief executive, a lying journalist, a corrupt politician. It feels satisfying to point a finger, but it stops us from actually thinking. When Rosling's students wanted to, quote, punch the face of the pharmaceutical chief executive for not researching diseases of the poor, he walked them through the logic. The chief executive answers to the board. The board answers to shareholders. Who are the shareholders? Often retirement funds. Who owns the retirement funds? Ordinary people, like your grandmother. Blaming a single villain distracts us from the real cause, the system. The system is designed to maximize profit, and there's no profit in curing people who have no money. The problem isn't one evil person. It's a flawed system. If you want to change the world, you have to understand the system. Finally, there's the urgency instinct. Now or never. Salespeople and activists use this to shut down analytical thinking and force quick decisions. Rosling tells a heartbreaking story from his time as a doctor in Mozambique. A mysterious paralytic disease was spreading in a rural area. Fearing a contagious epidemic, he and the local mayor felt they had to, quote, do something immediately. They set up a roadblock to stop buses from leaving. The next day, women who needed to get to market to sell their goods found the road blocked, so they took small fishing boats instead. The boats capsized. Dozens of mothers and children drowned. his urgent, panicked decision, made with the best intentions, led to terrible tragedy. The lesson: when a decision feels urgent, take a breath. It's rarely now or never. It's rarely either or. An urgent problem requires data and clear-headed analysis, not drastic, uninformed action. This is the essence of factfulness. It's the practice of controlling these 10 dramatic instincts. It's the humility to recognize you don't know everything and the curiosity to find out. Hans Rosling's life was actually saved by this principle. He was in a remote village in Congo, surrounded by an angry mob with machetes. They believed he was a foreign doctor who had come to steal their blood. Fear, blame, and urgency had taken over. Just as things were about to turn violent, a barefoot, illiterate woman stepped forward. She quieted the crowd. She reminded them of the measles vaccine. She remembered how their children used to die from measles, and then doctors came with research, and now they don't. She made the connection. "How do you think they discovered the measles vaccine?" she asked. "They do what this doctor calls research. I have a grandchild crippled by this disease. If we let him study us, maybe he can stop it." She rolled up her sleeve and said, "Here, doctor, take my blood." In that moment of extreme tension, this woman demonstrated perfect factfulness. She controlled her fear, looked for a rational explanation, and remembered that things can and do get better. She saved his life. If she could do it then, we can do it now. We can learn to see the world not as it appears through the dramatic filter of our instincts, but as it really is. A world still full of challenges, yes, but also, overwhelmingly, a world that's getting better. When you finish Factfulness, it's like someone just handed you a new pair of glasses. The blurry, scary, chaotic world suddenly snaps into sharp focus. And for the first time, you actually see it clearly. What makes this book so powerful isn't just the data, though the data is remarkable, it's the deep humanity behind it. Hans Rosling wasn't some detached statistician crunching numbers in an air-conditioned office. He was a doctor who spent his life on the front lines of global health, in the poorest, hardest places on earth. He had seen the suffering firsthand. He counted dead children. He knew the world was, in many ways, brutally hard. And that's precisely what makes his message so profoundly hopeful. He wasn't some starry-eyed optimist viewing the world from an ivory tower. He was a possibilist who had witnessed incredible progress against impossible odds. He saw that change wasn't just possible, it was happening all around us, quietly, gradually, almost completely unnoticed. The book is his final gift to us. He was diagnosed with incurable cancer as he began writing, and he poured every ounce of wisdom from his entire life into these pages. He knew this was his last chance to equip us against the ignorance he saw as so devastating. Devastating because it breeds fear and hopelessness. When we wrongly believe nothing is improving, we lose confidence in the approaches that actually work. We give up. Factfulness is the antidote to that despair. It's a source of genuine mental peace. It frees you from the exhausting pressure to have an opinion on everything, and the constant anxiety of feeling like the world's about to collapse. So what can you actually do with this today? Here are some simple ways to start practicing factfulness in your own life. First, next time you see a dramatic headline or scary news report, pause and ask yourself, which of my dramatic instincts is this triggering? Is it fear, blame, urgency? Just recognizing the instinct is the first step to controlling it. Second, whenever you encounter a single, big, lonely number, always ask for another number to compare it with. 4.2 million babies died last year is a tragedy, but knowing that number was 14.4 million in 1950 reveals a story of incredible progress. Context changes everything. And third, carry the 4 income levels in your mind. Remember that the world isn't divided into rich and poor. Most people are in the middle, and their lives are steadily improving. This simple framework will help you make sense of almost any global story you encounter. That was a summary of Factfulness by Anna Rosling. We've explored the core ideas today, but a summary is like looking at a photograph of a magnificent feast. You can see what's on the table, but you can't taste the food. The real magic of this book is in the stories, the charts, and that profound sense of clarity that comes from reading it yourself. It's in those quiet moments when one of Hans's anecdotes connects with your own experience and permanently changes how you see things. This summary is a map, but the book is the journey. If anything we've discussed today has sparked your curiosity, I genuinely encourage you to take that journey. You'll find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. It helps us know we're on the right track and make sure you won't miss our next deep dive into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and keep growing together.